You know, the older I get, the more I realize how many people out there won't watch a single movie older than themselves. That's a tragedy considering most movies nowadays are trash. But that's why I'm here, so let's rectify these crimes against God and good taste for your sake and our children's sake. Because today, the Movie Howze is here to retro-recommend. It seems nostalgia is all Hollywood has as currency anymore. Out-of-control budgets alongside myriad other issues have made Tinseltown rely on lukewarm leftovers of past successes to try and eke by. And if there's one studio guilty of this cinematic sin above all others, it's Disney. I miss when they used to take creative risks like Who Framed Roger Rabbit or Tron Legacy. Nowadays, if they're not squandering co-opted brands like Star Wars or Marvel, they are making soulless, overly long, artistically bankrupt, photorealistic retreads of their own animated classics. I don't call them live action because there's more CG than actual actors or sets in these movies. Films that serve little purpose beyond milking an IP, holding onto a copyright, and virtue signaling to the fictitious modern audience. This bizarre urge to adapt animation to live action has always confounded me. In this ill-advised quest for supposed legitimacy, they've robbed what made stories done in this medium unique. Animation is not inferior. In many ways, it's superior to live action film, as it can do things next to impossible to achieve even today. Yes, you made the lions look photoreal in the Lion King remake. At the cost of character, you now can't have Scar doing diva shit, or hyenas goose-stepping to drive home a narrative parallel. Ironically enough, Disney's very first silver screen retread of one of their animated classics was antithetical to the type of slop they release nowadays. Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, released all the way back in 1994. A remake that respected the original animated film enough to not just simply repeat it and do its own thing instead. And it's a fun adventure movie that has more personality than the last 5 so-called efforts from Disney. A big part as to why this fares so much better in my opinion was the House of Mouse hiring a director like Stephen Sommers. Fresh off the moderate success of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, on top of directing, he took it upon himself to completely rewrite the script Disney had developed. And instead of getting cold feet, Disney backed his vision. His take still begins with the familiar story of the man-cub Mowgli being raised among the animals in the Indian jungle. You got the likes of Baloo, Bagheera, Grey Brother, King Louie, Kaa, and of course Shere Khan. But this time, no talking animals, no musical numbers. Instead, the narrative switches gears, morphing into a romantic action-adventure set in the backdrop of British colonized India. The decision to age up Mowgli and essentially mix Indiana Jones with Tarzan gives this its own unique identity that's still able to play in the wheelhouse of both the Kipling novel and the Disney cartoon. And while still early in his career, Sommers turns in solid work here, showcasing some gorgeous visuals benefiting from being shot actually out on location. It also has well-staged action set pieces with some really impressive stunt work. It's interesting watching this and then following up immediately with a later film of his like The Mummy, and just you see how he evolved his eternal sugar-high 12-year-old like style of directing. Whereas The Mummy is a pitch-perfect blend of action, horror, romance, and comedy, and something like Van Helsing is just way too excessive and absurd. The Jungle Book feels less confident. It still has many of the same positive qualities of his later filmography, but it's just not as sure-footed. His script is the source of weakness, as it gets bogged down in the middle of the movie for almost a half hour, with little to no jungle, before getting a strong second wind, heading back into the adventure of lost cities, booby traps, and man-eating tigers. It's clear where his strengths as a storyteller lie. Is it any truer to the book than the Disney cartoon? No, but that's to be expected. To have your story adapted by Disney is to know it's going to be changed, sometimes heavily so. What most can hope for with the Disney adaptation is a well-told, entertaining movie that carries the essence of the prose. For The Jungle Book, it was Kipling's love of India, and this film gets that. Using actual animal performers was risky, but seeing actors chased and pounced on by a real tiger, a bear waving goodbye, or an orangutan blowing raspberries and acting like a clown is more authentic than whatever digital effects wizardry can achieve. Because when it's there, it's there. Only occasionally do they have to resort to like puppets or animatronics for stuff that's just too dangerous. The character of Kaa, for example, reimagined here as the guardian of a lost city's treasure room rather than the comical secondary villain, was a mixture of both practical and crude digital effects. Another nice flourish with this take on Kipling's novel is how it brings in the whole British colonization aspect to the story, with Shere Khan essentially being India's wrath upon the encroaching modern world. The tiger's no more guilty than a hurricane is. If you're in his path, bad luck, brother. It changes the dynamic and allows the villains to be of the human variety. But besides the animal talent, the actual cast is pretty good too. Jason Scott Lee was Sommers' first and only choice to play Mowgli, and he plays the part well, conveying a naive innocence with the animal actor seeming really at ease around him. He's a solid actor, but what really aids him is he's just naturally likable with an infectious smile. Said likability seeps into his roles, with his physical performances doing much of the work for him, as seen in his earlier success the year prior with Dragon: The Bruce Lee Story. His love interest, the Jane to his Tarzan so to speak, was a very young apple-cheeked Lena Headey, years before she became best known as the conniving blonde lush Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones. It's weird seeing her in a role where she's just sweet, never once threatening to cut off Sean Bean's head or macking on her brother. Likely, she's fine here. Their romance is kind of the Anakin Padme, they're two attractive people in beautiful exotic locations, they must be in love variety. It's serviceable, it's fine, it gets the job done. If anything, seeing this really reaffirms that Summers has a very particular type, and that is brunette and British. Alongside them is a fantastic assemblage, including the likes of Sam Neill, John Cleese, and Cary Elwes, in an at the time very atypical role for him as the villainous Captain Boone. I also feel I need to make special note of Jason Fleming in his very first movie role as Boone's sycophantic underling, Wilkins. He's an underrated character actor, and in this movie he has one of the most convincing looks of sheer terror I have ever seen when he comes face to face with Shere Khan. Lastly, in the plus columns is Basil Polidorus, providing yet another great film score, full of romance and grand adventure, not among his best work, but still very solid. And when you combine all these disparate elements, you get a pretty fun popcorn movie. Yeah, it's about 15 minutes too long, dragging in the middle like previously mentioned, and the digital compositing hasn't aged well at all. And this part isn't even its own fault, but it's not an easy film to get a hold of outside of digitally renting it. It's not on Disney Plus, and it has no physical media release beyond a long out-of-print DVD. Hell, the only reason I even have this DVD is sheer dumb luck finding it for $1 in some random thrift store a couple years back. But if given the choice between rewatching this or the 2017 Jon Favreau remake, I'll take this any day. Which, yeah, I liked the new one at the time I first saw it. From an effects standpoint, it's a marvel, but when you take a step back, you realize it's merely playing off our nostalgia, making us think we liked it on its own merit instead of just us responding to our own fond memories of the original cartoon. It's a manipulation that can and does work. Like, duh, Lilo and Stitch was gonna make bank. Even with the post-release pushback at the various awful changes made that rightly rubbed audiences the wrong way, it's still gonna be among this year's highest earners. I envision the next decade, if Hollywood doesn't full-on crash, to be filled with nothing but soulless live-action remakes. The prospects of this happening to The Incredibles or Shrek is as ghastly as it is inevitable. And that future sounds as boring as beige, less genuine than Sweet and Low, more concerned with messaging than entertainment, but most of all, it's redundant, man. I don't need to see a live-action Moana remake. The original isn't even a decade old. At least with a reimagining like this, you can tell there's some actual passion and talent present wanting to make a movie that riffs off its predecessor, respecting its audience enough to give them something beyond member berries repackaged with a side order of cringe social messaging. And for that reason, in the end, I find Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book to be an enjoyable midway matinee that definitely deserves a watch. But that's enough for me. I'd like to hear what y'all thought. Like, comment, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. But more importantly, until next time, stay safe out there.